Hi, this is the so thought about sorry there was some coming back to the video. This is part of the thought about. So yesterday I have given brief detail about the state architecture. Now well, this video we are going to talk about fits. What are fixes? Why do we need? Where should we use the fixes? When we should not use it, and different kinds of fixes. So basically, we are going to cover all the details about the fixes and the agenda of this types of its advantages and this is where should we, why we should, how we should do it. So we are going to cover all these details. So I'm hoping after this video, those who are watching this will have a clarity with the concept. I test. Now starting with the sir, what is sir? So kind of stable data that can set up our PyTest automation frame and we can use it again and again. For example, we have test, login, dashboard, logout, etc. For each of the test, open the browser, login, then we have to open the browser, we have to check the dashboard, we have to open the browser, we have to check the logout and etc. So in all these tests, what is common? The common thing is opening the browser. Instead of opening and closing the browser for each test, you can just set up a little module, or we can say little place somewhere opening and closing of the browser is maintained, and that can be done with the help of. So when it comes to helps us in setting up the stable data that we can throughout the framework. Not just about opening and closing the browser, but there are many other things like DB connection or any API tokens or session management, anything that we need to maintain. So we can just that with the help of fixers. Now let's understand it with the real life, how can connect with the real life analogy. Suppose we are in a school uh, or college, wherever, and we have a exam for many subjects, and there are students what or college that they set up an exam center. Students came, give the exam, and go back to their home. And for every subject, same thing happens the fifth cell. Every in every test, or we can say for every test, we just set up the browser or API token beforehand, and the test just uses it, and it is executed after that setup. Another example we can set from the restaurant. Suppose in restaurant we have kitchen, we have hall where and taught and have their dinner. So manager came and take the order and go back to the kitchen. Now in the kitchen there are many things that are needed, like utensils, vegetables, spices, etc. Now for every order kind of thing. So restaurant set up this beforehand, and whenever order comes, they just share the order whichever they have brought. Same things you can see in the fixer also. Whenever the test need any data, the fixer set up the data, test use that those data for execution, and then set up. Was like tell about the fixer. Now coming to the types of fixer detail. So one thing about fixer that I would like to say that it just function but with a decorator. If we see the syntax of fixer, something like PyTest dot fixer def. So the syntax is similar to normal function. We are just using a decorator. Now this decorator is important while getting fixer. Here we are just well PyTest dot fixer decorator, but in future we will use different kinds of data for like parameterizing or for managing the scope. So that's it. Now coming to the types of fixer. So PyTest does not categorize the fixer by itself, but fixer is defined based on how we are finding it. Some of the important kinds of that we use day to day life in automation are return fixer. It is one of the most common fixer that we see in our day to day automation, but we are just returning any type of data. Now, second, the parameterized fixer. When we have to use parameters while the calling the fixer, then parameterized fixer is option. Now, the third is scope based fixer. So, if there are any that we want for any particular session or any particular module, can manage that by using the scope based fits. Helps us in getting uh, session based or module based fits or class based fits. Next one is auto use. So once we define it, the test will automate auto use. Another is chaining fixer. Chaining fixer is also important as one fixer is into another and it forms chain. Okay. Like we can take example of database fixer, database fixer from user to login. And last is the contest.py. Contest.py fixer. Now, why we are using contest.py fixer as a separate category? Because the place for fixer is not defined. We can use the fixer anywhere, but we are using in contest.py, then all the tests are going to use. So there is understanding among many business that uh, meant only contest.py, but not so. You can use the fixer anywhere, but when we are using contest.py, then we are ensuring that all the tests can it. These are some of the important fixtures that day to day life of the can advanced fixer factory fixer, but it for returning a function instead of data. We'll go through the syntax of each of the fixer and cover the detail for each of them. Let's go to is stored, and how the answer is being used. Now let's create a file fits.py and how each of the feature work. Now, as we started with return fits, return fixer is something return the data. So before starting with the fixer, as I already told yesterday that is you have not installed the PyTest, you can install it by in simple command. Uh, if someone has not installed a PyTest in the, they can use command called the PyTest, and PyTest. Now, once the PyTest is installed in your laptop, you can verify the version by the PyTest. So now we can see PyTest version 911 is installed in our. So let's go ahead and practice some of the program, understand the concept better. So the first feature that we had discussed was the return feature. Return feature is something that returns the data. So the first line that we write before any code is importing the PyTest. After importing the PyTest, we can write our code. For example, a future example, and Now, if we write the function like this is just simple function Python. On its sir, we have to the PyTest iterator, and that is PyTest.fetch. So before moving forward, I would like to say the steps of the PyTest expect all the file name start with test. We are writing test for PyTest, then we have to the test word as a prefix. Getting any file for PyTest, we have to use the test word in the file name. Now it is working. I was just trying to run PyTest from the help of Python, and that's why it was not working. Now we can see I just try to perform the insertion with a wrong name, and it was expecting equal, but I gave name without W. Insertion failed. Here, what we are doing, we are just getting a simple test of first use the PyTest data PyTest dot. Then we define the user sorry function name, and then whatever the data we want to just mention it, and in whatever module or function we want to use, just use the function name as the argument, and then can well function logic. This was one of the simple example for returning the data. Now let's see another example. Also, if we have to use multiple, every time we have to use the PyTest dot datator, sorry, PyTest dot fixer as a datator. PyTest recognize the function as a fixer. So this time let's return a list of. So when it comes to returning data, we can return any type of data from the fixer. Return, suppose we are trying to return as a list. Now we have to just create PyTest, test it, and we will just the PyTest as a argument, and then we will that if the now we have written two PyTest and we can has selected two items. But represent the number of tests that have been executed in our test auto. Now here we can see one failed, one passed. So this one failed and this passed. Now it is passed because the sum of the list that we are returning time. Now instead of assertion, can also print data of the. So if we try to number directly, PyTest won't have to command minus v. Stands for verbose. that was minus S is used for print the data, the PyTest minus V stands for verbose and it print the output in tail. So here we can see our both tests are passed. Now let's move to the next feature, that is the feature chaining. So in feature chaining, we just take multiple which are into and form a chain. So here put the PyTest. Again we use PyTest.network define one, and here we are returning just in okay. Now here we are creating another feature, and the important part is that when we are trying to create the have to the this feature name as the argument next feature. Our previous feature name was username. I'm going to pass it as the parameter, and now I'm going to print. Let's try to here we are trying it in our feature. We have created just but in real we can create as many as we want. For our first feature, I was returning my name. For second, pass the name of first feature as a argument, and we catch its data that is returning, and then we again return the whole data in the our test. So here we are printing the whole data that the is returning, and this is hello Ujjwal. Hello comes from and Ujjwal comes from the username. Example of in the flow. The flow is like username. From username we do, and from our PyTest test function. Now let's take another example of training feature. So the database, and suppose printing in like database successfully connected. It's just dummy message. In a practical scenario, we actually can set up the database connection. In the previous example, we were printing example. Let's perform insertion. Let's hope does not return. That means just that we are example about the that how we can use as its data in another feature, and then how we can those features overall in our test. Now, one of the important parameterized features just pass the data as a parameter. If we have multiple data for which want to run a feature, can pass. Now, here in parameterized, we have to use the same data of PyTest.fix. just have to add params after the. So here we use params, and whatever the parameter that we want to pass for want our feature run. Suppose we are going to run our feature for multiple browser, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, then we can pass all those browser name as the parameter and of its run for params. Uh, yes, here we are passing browser name as a parameter and just state browser, and while using the parameterized, we have to use the request keyword as the argument. And now if we have to return this dot, now let's try to print the data. So parameterized with passing three parameters: Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and then here we are using request keyword. With the help of request keyword, we can return parameter real time of fixer run time all the parameter. First it for Chrome, then Firefox, then Edge. Helpful in real time because in real you have to run the test cases multiple browser, and there we can use the logic. Now we are catching the data of as usual, and here we are printing. So here the expected output, the browser name being signed. If it says PyTest, here we can see our browser names are printed from Firefox Edge. So in real, you can just add the logic of opening and closing the browser. Just run on Chrome, Firefox on Edge separately. So this is one of the example that is been widely used in real life. Now let's take another example of size function. Time let's pass one to again. Every time we are the parameterized function, we have to use the request in as the argument, and then we have to again use the same request word as the while returning the data. So Here we are using parameterized fixture to find whether the number is not. Here we have passed 1, 2, 3, and some number is not even 1, obviously, or 2, number is or next few numbers 3, 7, 9, it is any number is not. So this is how we can use parameterized fixture get data on of parameters. Now if we the logic how parameterize work, we are sending multiple parameters. Now each time it's a run, the pick one data, run the test, then it picks another data, then it again run the test and on last parameter. As I earlier said, when we are trying to run our test on multiple browsers, we have to just logic at what kind of browser we are doing for condition. Tell it. Now for the last fix that we will the session fix. So session fixer are where we want to maintain the session of for any particular module or for any particular. So in those cases, kind of for example, if you want to maintain the browser open a whole of the test cases, can use the test. Similarly, if you want any particular data for just in particular function, can use the function. Sorry, just reset your session. So like earlier, we have to just first import the PyTest, then parameterize with the parameters. Now here, scope fit. So we have to define the scope. Whatever our scope is like class or module or function or session, we have to just that our scope is a whole session. So we just have to pass session as the value for scope and then write our it's a logic. here we are trying to keep with the as the student. Then we are creating database maintain some, then yield and then distance, and then how it yes. It has created a connect and a module as group for this. So if we change the again the output, but in real when we are defining the scope, the feature is available only those only. So session module class kind of scope. So upcoming session we will tell how we can use the scope for finding the range of feature that where those features will be available and how long. That's it for today. The remaining and we will for example have clarity on everyone joining this tomorrow.